Ah, Jesse.
What's going on? What's going on? Hey, Jesse. Hey. So, can I take a seat?
Yeah. Yeah, Callie?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And if you power, they're inside the desks.
Do we absolutely need Kali?
Kali is going to be very useful. Do you have Metasploit installed in something else?
I have it installed on Windows, but I'm installing on...
We can hope for the best. We'll see where it fails.
Yeah.
Really, I gear everything towards using Kali. It may work okay.
I'm downloading it right now.
But we'll go ahead and start. Would someone bring him one of the handouts? Yes. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Intro to Metasploit class. Hopefully this turns out okay. It's not a complete failure. I got better equipment to record it this time around, at least. First of all, a little warning. Don't do this here. There may be a set-aside lab that you all have in the Computer Security Club. You can do it there, do it at home, maybe do it on our own host-only VM session on your machine, but don't do it here on the university network. The administrators are probably not likely to understand. To give you an idea, just because someone has a doctorate, even in something related, doesn't mean they have a whole lot of reasoning skills. Here's a great quote I'd like to use just to illustrate this. Yes, I am full of animosity towards some. Additionally, Mr. Crenshaw's personal website, House on University Resources, is a compendium of links to known computer hacker websites, hacker toolkits, and other hacker resources. Larry Mann. Now, this is one of the things said because a few incidents happening, and they want to use this as a reason to get rid of my personal website on campus. And this is a guy who taught comp sci for like 20 years. So, keep in mind, if you, don't do that here. Even if you were in the right, you're not going to get a fair shake. Remember, as a student, you are not the customer. You're not even the product. You're a source of fuel. All right, that's enough of that rant. My name is Aidan Crenshaw. I run IronGeek.com. I have an interest in InfoSec education. Don't know anything. I'm just a geek with time in my hands, so I try to figure things out and teach other people. And I'm also a senior information security engineer at a Fortune 1000 company, and a co-founder of DerbyCon. Now, what is Metasploit? I'm assuming you basically know something about Metasploit since you decided to come to this class. It was, is an exploitation framework that first started off in 2003, developed by H.D. Moore. It was originally written in Perl, but it's since been rewritten in Ruby and has so much more into it than it ever did before. Rapid7 bought it in 2009, and they rolled it into some of their commercial offerings as well. And essentially, it's a framework for, well, exploitation. So you have all sorts of different modules in it. Exploits, payloads, auxiliaries, scanners, automated tools, all sorts of fun stuff. Now, since I am not a business law and ethics teacher here at the university, I'm choosing not to plagiarize. So, I am going to let you know that a lot of this material came from these particular resources. Metasploit unleashed a whole bunch of people, most of them are saying that offensive security, got together and came up with this great set of documentation for learning how to use Metasploit. This is my personal website if you choose to go to it. This is the Metasploit Unleashed website. And of course, if you ever have questions about this kind of thing, Twitter is an awesome place to find developers and people in the security industry. Of all social networks, I highly recommend getting on Twitter as far as InfoSec is concerned. And this particular Metasploit Unleashed set of documentation was put out there to help support Hackers for Charity. The idea was, if you enjoyed the documentation, donate to Hackers for Charity. So people in this class and the people who might be viewing this online, please go out to the URL you see in the video and donate. As far as downloads you'll need for this class, or different places you can get the tools, we're mostly going to use Kali Linux because it's already have Metasploit installed. You can also get the free version of Metasploit at metasploit.com, and there's also commercial and community versions at Rapid7. Now, the commercial community versions have GUI wrappers around them that I didn't really plan on using. I was going to show you mostly MSFConsole, so we're not going to be using that. Mostly we're just going to be using Kali Linux. So hopefully you have a VM install of that. If you just have Metasploit installed on Windows, we'll see what works and what breaks, but I get the impression that Windows is like kind of an afterthought install base. And I'm pretty sure they've done a lot more testing in the Linux environments. Now the Metasploit architecture, everything is written in Ruby, so you have Ruby libraries, you have other libraries that they've written to help mesh everything together. You have different interfaces, such as the console and the command line, And, well, the web and the GUI interface, as far as I know, the official ones I think have been mostly discontinued. There's also Armitage, which you can hook in via remote procedure calls and be able to use the whole Metasploit framework. And there's also modules, and there's all sorts of modules. There's payloads, exploits, encoders, post mods, and auxiliaries. And we'll talk a little bit about them in a second. I got this. Yes?
Oh, okay. Should I save questions for later?
Oh, you can ask. Go ahead.
Okay. I heard that Armitage, you said it was had remote procedure calls. Is that right? RPC framework?
Well, basically, you start Metasploit as a service, and it's not like it's using a command line thing that's just being a GUI front-end for a command line. There's actually like the whole remote procedure call service on the local box.
Okay. Does that mean that multiple people can actually use the same service?
Yes, well, yes, in theory. And actually, Armitage has some stuff, and I haven't used a whole lot of it, built into where if you have a pen testing team, you can say, hey, I got this session, I'm not sure what to do with it, I'll throw it up for someone else. Have you used that functionality, Jeremy?
So you can share a session?
Yeah, for instance, I'm not very good at, let's say, web vulnerabilities. I'll say, okay, I know I got into this box, I know it's a web server. Jeremy, you want to take a look at this? And I can send him my session.
Wow, okay.
But that's one of the features that Armitage has. It's pretty nifty. And I think he's added some more stuff. Raphael Mudge is the guy who does Armitage. And he also has a commercial version or something based on it called Cobalt Strike. All right, some terminology. First of all, what's an exploit? Exploit is basically a vector to get into a system. Let's say it's a buffer overflow. Let's say it's an XSS vulnerability on a website. Let's say it's SQL injection. Something that allows you to get in. A payload is what you end up doing once you're in. So a payload might be something like, oh, I have buffer overflow. I put in some code in that buffer overflow that sends me back a shell. This could be just a command line shell that would be on the system if you were sitting in front of it. You could also have something send back to you like a VNC session to where you can see the GUI. Most of this class we're going to be using Meterpreter, which is its own little special shell that has all sorts of nice, beautiful built-in features. There's also encoders, which can take your payload and exploit and encode it to where it's harder for people to know what exactly it is. There's one called shikariganai, which is really popular. My understanding in Japanese, that means nothing can be done about it. And it's good for getting past anti-malware, though I've mixed results. It depends on how you use it, how many times you use it. You can actually do multiple iterations of it. There's also auxiliaries. Auxiliaries could be any old thing. I think there's some like file format vulnerability ones in there. I notice a lot, usually when I think of auxiliaries, I think of like scanners. And we'll be showing one of those as well. All right, a bit about different types of payload. There's an inline payload where basically the entire exploit code goes out there at one time. The entire payload gets there at one time. However, in some cases, a buffer that you're overflowing may not have enough space to it, or whatever vulnerability you're using, there might be memory limitations. So there's something called staged. And in staged, you have a little subpart of the payload. You get that started, and it grabs the rest of the payload for you. Now, reverse. Who here has worked on firewalls? Okay. Who here has a NAT box at home for the wireless router?
Everybody, right?
Right, pretty much everybody here. Well, you notice how, unless you set an explicit port on there to port forward to one of your inside IP addresses, it translates IP addresses for you. And you can get out because you're initiating connection, but other people couldn't contact one of your boxes behind your router unless you've set it up so they can. Well, the thing about reverse is you hit the exploit and then you have it shovel a shell back towards you. Since it's establishing the outbound connection, egress filtering is almost always weaker than ingress filtering. So it's more likely to get through. And there's also various payloads that have NX stuff, no execute restrictions, ways around that so that you can actually get the code to function. Now on the simple side of how Metasploit works, it has so many different functionalities, but one of the simpler ways to explain it, at least one of the ways you use it the most often probably, is you set an exploit, you set a payload, you set a target, and you pop a box. Copyright Dave Kennedy. Now there's different ways of interfacing into Metasploit. There's MSFConsole. This is probably the most well supported of it, and pretty much all the options that are available in Metasploit you can do from here. There's also MSF Client. Now MSF Client is all command line, and it's like one command at a time. And the nice thing about it though is you can script it and throw it into other tools, which is nifty. Might be a little harder to use, and doesn't have quite as much support as MSFConsole. Then there's also the Armitage GUI, which is probably the GUI to use at this point. I think maybe they're still developing the MS GUI, but doesn't seem to, sorry, the MSF GUI, but doesn't seem to come with the default packages, at least not with Kali. Do you know if they stopped development on MSF Web and MSF GUI?
Well, I think that it's the new Ruby tool is kind of taking over all that. So when you start Metasploit and Postgres and all that stuff, if you browse to localhost 3790, then you'll get the new Ruby interface. And it seems to me that that's kind of supplanted those two, but I'm not an expert on their developing, so I'd have to ask.
I need to look at that more. That might be something for a future class. Sometimes I pick things up and then just teach them as I learn them. Okay.
We use the web GUI at work because it can act almost like an integration tool where you can import your Nessus and your Nmap scans and combine them all together. And so you can sort of get this console where you can sort of see like a graphical picture.
And this is the Ruby interface?
Well, it's a website, but I believe it's Ruby driven.
I'd like you to show me that sometime.
Okay.
Okay. Next up, we're going to show some basic Metasploit commands. And, well, I can read through all of these right here. I do want to emphasize, since I don't show it a whole lot on my worksheet here, set G is set global. So if you want to set a particular setting and then use it in other exploits later on, it sets it so that even when you back out of a certain exploit, it stays there. But we're going to go ahead and use some of these here shortly. So that's actually all I have as far as PowerPoint. Pretty much the rest of it is we're going to be in Metasploit playing around. So for those that have a Kali installed up, hopefully you installed it in VMware, just log in with root and Tor. Now if you ever start hosting up services and so forth, you probably want to change that password. And I'm going to show you a few things about the directory structure of Metasploit. So, how many people here have used Linux much? Okay, well you can use tab completion. I'm going to use CD space, and we'll start to type opt. And by the way, everybody, I have this on the sheets, and when I post the video, I think I'll just go ahead and post this in the notes with it. So, opt, tab Metasploit, A tab fills out the rest of it for me, and so on and so forth. Okay, I think I mistyped something when I...
I think it's the apps.
Yeah, I did apps instead. Yeah. Yep, definitely. Alright. Right now I'm inside that directory. And you can see we have a bunch of different tools in here. We're going to go cover a few of them. We all go cover MSF Venom, hopefully. MSFConsole, a whole lot. And a few of the other ones. But you also see the modules, the plugins, and everything is in here. If I was to change directory into modules, you see how it's broken down into payloads, exploits, auxiliaries, and so forth. Oh, ways to update Metasploit. Now, if you're doing a standalone install and you need to do an update, probably just a MSF update. Hit enter, and that will do the job. However, for Kali Linux, they've tried to do better integration to where you can upgrade the Metasploit framework while using apt-get. For doing that, I do an apt-get. Apt-get update, semicolon, apt-get, and you have to spell it right, just upgrade. Now right now, that's not going to get me anything new since I updated earlier today, or maybe something. But that's another way you can update everything, including Metasploit on Kali. Now let's actually introduce using, oh yeah, some problem with Open VMware tools that I tried to install. Let's switch back to this window. Okay, we're going to get started actually using the Metasploit command line interface. As I was saying before, the major use for this would be, maybe one-off exploits, or if you need to script something. So, and I have all these written down in the sheet again. MSF, command line, exploits. And by the way, one of the reasons I changed into this module directory was because I was kind of lazy and I didn't want to have to remember how to type all this. So I was going to tab complete everything. Windows. And I'm going to use MS. Okay. Oh, sorry. Got to get into DC, ER, CP, and I'm going to use the MS03 026. Does anybody remember this one from way back in the day?
Like 2004-ish?
Oh yeah, well, 2003. The MS 03 means it came out in 2003, and I believe it was the 26th vulnerability they found that year. I believe that's how they do the naming. By the way, you see it has the RB on the end? Or the .RB, I need to take that off. And if I do an uppercase O, that shows me options for that particular exploit. Now I can choose all sorts of different payloads. I'm not going to actually choose a payload. It seems to default to doing a reverse interpreter. But here's the different settings we can do. What the remote host we want to attack is, and what the remote port is. Now in some cases, it's already going to have that stuff filled out for us. Like you see 135 is already filled out there for us. Now I'm going to have to figure out what boxes out there we can actually attack. And I'm trying to remember, I don't have them set with a static IP address, which see. NBT scan, that was correct. That was what I wanted. NBT scan is what we're going to use to find some of these ones out here so I can exploit a few of them. First, ifconfig is going to tell me what my IP address is. If you're on Windows there, ipconfig. I see I'm 10.1.1.132. So I want to be able to scan that network. So NBT scan, and I'm going to say 10.1.1. Well, I could put in your IP address in here, but /24. I'm using CIDR notation. Oh, great. Classless internet domain routing, I believe. Basically, it's a way of saying what the range is. And it's saying /24, so the first 24 bits of that is all network space. So what this is going to do is it's going to scan 10.1.1. everything. And you see a bunch of boxes out there. You see the ones called PwnMe? Those are boxes sitting on a little bit beefier laptop over there that we can actually connect to and play around with. Now I'm going to use PwnMe 1, which is a 116. So please don't use that one because I want to make sure my demos actually work. Feel free to follow along though on any of the higher ones. But yeah, PwnMe 1 is 116, so I'll be using that one.
How are you running all those, Adrian? Did you just spin up a bunch of virtual machines?
I have 12 gigs of memory in that laptop over there and a bunch of virtual machines, and they're very small XP Service Pack Zeros.
Oh, wow, okay.
I wanted something that was really easy to teach with, man. I wanted it to exploit itself practically. Okay, that was options. Let's actually look at, instead, that same command from before with MSF client, except we're going to use uppercase P and see what payloads we got. A whole bunch of ones. We could have it shovel a shell back to us. We could have it give us a VNC session. But really the most practical one is probably Meterpreter. And that's the one that's going to use by default if we don't say anything else. So we're going to use that command, and what we're going to tell it to do is we're going to have to set some options on the command line so that it works. So we want to set our host equal to whatever our target IP is. In my case, it's 10.1.1.116. You all feel free to choose one of the higher ones. If you really want to figure it out, maybe you just go backwards in order or something. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I don't have quite enough in class for y'all to do it anyway, but you can try on one of the ones higher than 116 because I want to make sure the demo actually works. Now I have to set up a local host so the remote box knows how to get back to me. I also may have multiple IP addresses configured on my local host, so it's got to know which IP address to connect me back on. And remember how I was saying use ifconfig? Well, this particular force of habit, Kali install is at 10.1.1.132. That's my local address. So I want to set that to be 10.1.1.132. Let me double check to make sure I didn't screw that up. And let's actually set a shell. Let's actually say, we're actually all going to set a payload. We'll say payload, and we'll set the payload to be Windows shell underscore reverse underscore TCP. And remember how we were using the O and the P as directives before for finding out options and payloads? Well, this time we're going to use E for execute. Make a sacrifice to the demo gods. We can't use him because he has to drive me back later. Okay, now I'm on a Linux box, but I have what appears to be a Windows command shell. Yippee. Okay, maybe that doesn't. Maybe that was in newer versions of Windows that Who Am I is at. But here I am, and I believe I am running as system. And I found a little bit about information about the box using set, the set typing SET. And there I am. We've exploited the box, and we're into it. We got a command shell. But let's do something a little bit more fun. Control C to exit out of that. Instead of actually specifying a payload, we're just going to use the default payload, which is Meterpreter. And we're going to get a lot more into that a little bit later. So you take off the payload, exploit away. By the way, as you do this, you'll find that some of these are not as stable as others as far as exploits are concerned. Some exploits will hose a box. Some you'll work once. Sometimes they'll work every, like, blue moon. Yeah, we got Meterpreter session. From Meterpreter session, we can do all sorts of fun stuff, but that is in a slightly later section. But that's basically using the command line interface to get in there and do things. And from here, let's see who actually we are. I don't think I built that into. No, it's get UID. Get UID. Yeah, so I am system. Oh, should I hit? Well, I could be on crack. All right, let's go ahead and get out Meterpreter, and we're going to start playing around with MSFConsole. MSFConsole gives us some extra features, and generally the only reason you probably want to be using the command line version is if you want to throw it into a script of your own to do some stuff. So let's go ahead and type in MSFConsole. Well, actually, back up. If you did that, let me show you how to get back out of it. Remember my notes, I decided later on I was going to show MSFConsole without the database functionality in the background. I changed my mind later on, and so actually as soon as this starts up, we can exit out of it. You notice even on a fairly decent new system, it took a while to start up. Try starting MSFConsole up on a Raspberry Pi. It is possible, it just is incredibly slow. We're going to start up some services first instead of starting up Metasploit. So we're going to do service, and we're going to start up Postgres SQL, and we also want to start up Metasploit itself. So we have a service to listen to. And apparently it's already started. By the way, if we wanted to enable this so it automatically runs on startup every single time, which I may have already done at a previous time, you can use, sometimes tab completion bites you. This So update-rc.d Metasploit enable, and you do the exact same thing for Postgres. And then they both automatically start up whenever you boot the system, which can be handy. The general Metasploit philosophy, the general Kali philosophy is to not have many services running unless you absolutely need it. It used to be in previous versions of Backtrack, they wouldn't even have the network interface up until you told it to be up, which actually is kind of a good idea, and I wish they'd go back to it to a degree. If you've ever been at if you will see some fun, look in your DNS logs for like BT5 as a name of a host, or sorry, your DHCP logs for the BT5 as the name of a host. Someone might be using Backtrack on your network because it registered that name. Okay. We've done that. Now let's actually get back into MSFConsole. And I do have my commands out of order on my sheet, but we'll work around it. MSFConsole, and we'll get in there. And we're up in MSFConsole. First command you should probably know is help. Help will show you a lot of the things you can do. If you're like, ooh, what was that command? I don't quite remember, you know. You can use help and figure it out. You can also use question mark. Does the same thing as help. Oh, by the way, anything you can normally run from the command line, you can also run from inside of Metasploit framework. Like for instance, I wanted to ping something, like ping 8.8.8.8. I could do it. If I want to do an NS lookup on irongeek.com. Actually, better yet. Oh, that's not one's not. Couldn't find that meat. Huh. Maybe I need to go back and check out my DNS again because I thought I had hackme1 set up. Well, maybe not. Does an NS lookup on irongeek.com. And anything you would normally run from the command line. But let's do a little bit of looking around for what tools we want to find. Like you don't know quite the name of it. There's this exploit. It's MS08. Ooh, something, something. What is it? That you remember you wanted to use. You can use search functionality to be able to find it. And apparently search can also take regular expressions, though best luck figuring out exactly what you need to type to accomplish what you want. If I'm going to do a search for MS08, basically I'm looking for MS08067, which is a very popular exploit for people that don't patch regularly because it's incredibly stable. I mean, it's almost like having a purposeful backdoor because it's so reliable for if it's there, you can connect in. So I see a few things starting off of that. That's not the one I want, but it gives me a little bit of a description. Let me see, which one is it? MS8067. There we go. Now, if I wanted to, I could use that particular exploit. I'm going to right-click and copy because I'm an incredibly lazy typist. And I'm going to say use that exploit and hit enter. Now, I'm in that exploit, I can start using it. Now, if you ever get in the exploit and you don't want to be in it, just type back. That gets you back out of it. Oh, as well as tab completion, which I showed you before. Now, see, tab completions on finding Windows exploits isn't very practical because I'd have 854 different lines scroll past me real quick. That's not all that handy. So, oh, Q just broke me out of that. But you can use tab completion. You can also use the up and down arrows. I didn't think to explain that. Yeah, up and down arrows to go through your command history. But I'm going to use, and I didn't mean to open up another window. Use and that particular exploit. And now we're going to, we can do this in any order. We could have done this before. Let's say we want to know more about this exploit. We probably would want to do the info before we ever do the use, but we don't necessarily have to. We use the info command and pull up information on that particular exploit. It'll tell us stuff about it, you know, what the nature of the exploit is, links for more details. And you see this was a flaw in NetAPI 32 that we can use. And you also see a bunch of information about what options you could be able to set, what individual platforms you could try to target. Because well, memory address layout is going to be different depending on like where the what particular OS it is or what language it is. All this kind of varies. I usually just use the auto targeting, and that's what we're going to use here in a second. So we got that far along. We've seen what we have. Let's do a show options. It shows what options we have to set. Now you see our part's always set for us. It's probably what we want. You also see that SMB pipe browser is one we want to target. Apparently we have a couple different options, but no R host is set yet. So we have two options here. You can use a set or a set G. A set G is going to be a set global. So if I back out of this, it still remembers its IP for any of the other R hosts I try to set in the future. So I want to remember it, so I'm going to use a set G. And I want to target IP address 10.1.1.116, if I remember correctly. Oh, sorry, I missed out a part there. R host. Set G, R host, and then whatever the IP address is. And this is how you set different parameters. And now I have two options. I can either type exploit or run. They functionally do the same thing. It's just for like some of the auxiliaries, if you're just scanning something, saying exploit it doesn't really make sense. So I can say exploit or I could type run. Either will do the same in this case. Type exploit, cross your fingers, hope for the best. And we have a interpreter session. Yay! Now while we're on this subject, should probably talk a little bit about active versus passive. We're going to actually leave that up and running for the time being, and we'll talk a little bit about setting up a passive attack. And I actually got to make sure that I have everything ready to go for that. So actually, we've been going for, we haven't even been going for an hour yet, so let's keep going. Let's see. I'm going to show about using a passive attack. So what I'm going to do is, and I know I don't have this in the sheet yet, but we do cover it later on. I'm going to say background. Did anybody actually get a shell on one of the other boxes? A shell on one of the other boxes?
Yeah.
What's the Wi-Fi? Sorry, I gotta.
Oh,
It is Metasploit class, and the password's Derbycon.
Okay, lowercase.
Yep, all lowercase.
yes. I'm going to type background. And we can come back to that here in a bit. And you know what? Actually, even though we haven't gone about an hour yet, I say let's give it 10 minutes and then come back, and I'm going to get a couple things set up because I actually have to, for this next one to work, I have to make something more vulnerable than it already is.
Anybody have $3?
Okay, we are back. Now I have another box here I'm actually going to exploit. You can try following along on your own install. It may or may not work. This one I'm about to show, the first one at least, antivirus usually seems to be picking it up pretty readily right now. So I'm going to show you about using a passive attack. The one we just used was a active attack. We're actually going, hey, I'm going to hit you with some data. Passive attack is you wait for them to come to you. And you can lure them in various ways. Like you might be able to use a cross-site scripting flaw on a website and put your own website in there to where it gets redirected and it comes to you, and then you can serve up something that's like a browser's exploit. We're going to do something similar to that. So I'm going to use back and back on out. And we're going to, oh, by the way, these commands are coming up again later on. Sessions will show us what sessions we have, and you see that one session is still there since we backgrounded it. You can also do sessions L, and I think show sessions also works. If we want to interact with it later on, we use a -I and the particular number of the session, but we'll wait for that. Right now I want to show you a passive one. We're going to show you the Java signed applet one. So we want to use exploit, multi, browser, and Java signed applet. So we're going to use that one. And we're going to set some ports for this. Now a lot of times by default, let's do a show options And you see what's set there right now. Some of these we can leave exactly as they are, or some things we may change. I'm going to set a few different options. A lot of times you'll see that ports that are set are like 4444, and that's so well known about Metasploit that it's maybe a bad idea to use. So we're going to set some ports explicitly. And actually, let me do that show again with a little wider screen so that it doesn't screw up the formatting so bad. Show options. See what we got. Okay. Probably definitely going to have to set, well, server host I think we can probably get around setting. Server port 8080 is probably okay. But we're going to change them anyway just to show that you can and get you used to using the set and set G commands. In this case, I'm just going to use the set commands though. So I'm going to set local port. This is the port that's going to be listening locally to, well, it's semi-arbitrary as long as it keeps consistent, but I'm going to say 3456. Oh, by the way, you notice I take that in lowercase, and this next one I'm typing in uppercase. For these particular payload, or for these particular options, it doesn't matter which way you do it. So these ones are not case sensitive. And I'll set this one to 3245, semi-arbitrary. And I'm going to set my local host to be whatever my IP address is of my local box, which, again, ifconfig is apparently 132. So set lhost 10.1 132. Now, you know how Boris says not Gatorade? This really is Powerade, so I have no excuse for some of the typing I've been doing. You have to listen to a lot more podcasts to get that joke. Okay, let's see.
I got that joke.
Okay, we also want to set our applet name. To Adrian's_funapp. Or maybe Brandon's or whoever's. Change accordingly. Set the search common name to something. I'm going to set mine to irongeek.com. Encoder. Now this is a way of bypassing malware detection. Is to use an encoder that scrambles the executable code so that hopefully any malware doesn't find it. You may or may not have success with it. I'm going to use set encoder. And notice how it recognizes I'm doing an encoder and it automatically let me fill in things using the tabs. So I'm definitely going to use x86 and we're going to use shikaraganai. We're also going to set what payload we use. So set payload, and we'll go ahead and go with Windows interpreter and reverse TCP. We also do bind TCP, which basically means you would reach out to that port yourself and you'd establish the connection. So it'd start listening, well, service, I guess, for a better term, on the remote box. Okay, so we got that going, and
Adrian, one of the reasons you might use the uppercase on those is you can use tab completion then.
oh, you can? Thank you, I did not know that.
So if you do like a set payload again.
So I'm going to do set, well in this case,
or
I'm going to do URI path. Nice, thank you for the tip.
Sure.
Okay, folks at home, Jeremy uses these a lot more than I do. Apparently, uppercase, tab completion, even for the options. That's nice. See, I told you I don't know everything. I'm just geek with time in my hands.
So I just knew that because I refuse to type.
I understand, man. All right. Now we can type run, and we have a service listening. And since, once again, I'm lazy and I also refuse to type, this is my local IP address, and that's where it's listening. So I can copy that link address and we're going to try to serve this up and see what happens when we get someone to go to our website. Now, unfortunately, this is not as fun as it used to be. It used to be that anything you said, it would show here. So you could say, oh, we're a trusted site, or yeah, you should really accept me. It used to be less clear that what this is. So I'm going to accept anyway and run it. And I'm going to say, run with the old version. I had to make this particular one insecure. But if we can get them to run it, now if I do show sessions, you see I have two different sessions. Both are the same box. That's what we call, sorry, so two different boxes. One was that Pomi one from before, and the other was the Windows 7 box I just got into. And if I wanted to interact with one, I could do, by the way, that sessions, show sessions. You could also do sessions or just sessions space dash L for list. I want to do sessions dash I, and let's interact with session 2. Now, you may not be able to do this. If not, you can follow around on session 1. But now I'm in session 2, and I can get around and play with stuff. But you might notice, oh, I'm going to background this. And you might notice that if we tried to run the exact same exploit again, it would give us an error. So let's say I tried to say run again. That service is already listening, so it won't let me do it. So what you do is you type in jobs, not Steve kind, and you see what jobs are running. And now you could type in kill, and whatever number it is, 0, and kill that job, and now you can run the exact same exploit again. This is for if you want to keep most of the same options, but there's already one listening on that particular port. You can get out of it that way. Now, that's the way of doing it purely in Metasploit. I'll show you a little bit more fun way of doing it, and Dave's got a lot more stuff than just this, but I'll show you one. I'll show you Dave Kennedy's tool. That sounded perverted. We're going to use set toolkit. So type in set and tool. Really, it's not. It should have 2 T's in there, shouldn't it? Like it's toolkit. Anyway, set toolkit. And we're going to go through a few different options. I actually have the numbers there that you need to go through. We're going to choose social engineering attacks. We're going to choose number 2, website attacks. And we're going to use the Java applet attack method. Now he's actually gone out and got his own business. I think it's registered in Ohio someplace. That's called like verified publisher or something that sounds official. So you can actually sign certs, and when it says who it's signed by, it's something that sounds really official and like it's something that Oracle already trusts. Our next option is do a site cloner. So we can try to do a phishing attack against someone later on, and using site cloner, we can clone a website. I'm going to say no here because even though I am technically behind that, I'm not going to function like I am. I need the IP address for the reverse connection. So that's going to be the IP address of my local box here, which again was 10.1.1.132. That's the box that's going to be listening. And now I can clone a site. What site should we clone? Okay, since someone will get pissed at me about it, I'll do irongeek.com. You know, Bank of America, IU Credit Union, it could all be doable. But I'm going to do irongeek.com because I'm a nice guy. And now I have a bunch of payloads, but it's scrolled off the screen. The payload I actually want is number 2. I want me a interpreter shell because we like some interpreter. But you can see there's a ton of other options. But we'll go choose number 2. And I'm going to use the multi-encoder to try to bypass. And the port, I can just hit enter. If it's in brackets like that, that means the default's going to be 443. So I can just leave that as the default. And now I have the exploit handler started. And now hopefully if I can get someone to visit that site, I can pwn them. So let's change it to https:// and whatever the IP address our service is hosted on. Okay, I thought that worked. Something might be screwed up. I'm going to port 80 instead. Oh yeah, I remember that. That 445 is what it's going to connect back on. Sorry. But notice how he has a name called applet is verified, secured, publisher unknown. I can say I accept the risk and run it. Who's it say actually owns it? Verified, trusted, and secure is the name of the company or whatever, or the name of the app. So let's see. So everything is like geared towards, you know, enlisting trust from people. We'll say continue, and if I go back here, one particular session has been opened. If I do, okay, it's opened up multiple ones for me. If I do a sessions, there we go. I have boxes I can now interact with. Sessions-I, do number 1. And I can interact. Yippee, fun stuff. Okay, so that's using, those are both examples of passive attacks. One using just all Metasploit and one using Dave's tool set, and it has a lot of other tools. He has stuff in there for phishing, he has stuff in there for all sorts of other attacks. He has one that's like a browser auto-pwn where you use stuff in Metasploit that tries all these common client-side vulnerabilities. Though, when I've tried that on mine, it was problematic, just to say that. It's, your web browser may not behave the best when you try to visit that site. Let's see. So now that we actually have an interpreter session, you know what? I'm going to exit out of this one, and just to get you more used to interpreter, I'm going to exit. I'm going to say exit space -y because I want to exit anyway. And I'm going to get out of Dave's tool here. Just keep typing 99 until I'm out of it. I'm going to go back to our Metasploit session, and let's do sessions. And does anybody have a session they can play with? You have a session? Well, Windows not working?
Yeah, I'm having some issues with it. I can just look off this.
Okay. Yeah, you might want to sit next to him and huddle up, you know, put an arm around him, whatever you're into. You know, it's all good. We're going to use sessions-I, and let's use session 1, the one that was on my Windows XP box. Cool, I'm in my interpreter session. Let's show some basic commands. ls, list out the files in there. I believe I'm in the Windows sys32 directory. Should be able to change directories. And now you see I'm in the root of the Windows box. You can do sysinfo to find out information about it. By the way, you can't use tab completion. Box is called pwnme. Looks like it's a very old build of XP. System language is US English. This all might be useful if we try to use other exploits later on. If we wanted to be able to get a shell and interact with it like we're at the Windows command shell, there we go. We've got that. We can exit back out of that and get back into interpreter. We can do help to find out what all things we can do inside of here. And there's so many different commands built into interpreter, there's no way we can really cover them all. But there's a ton of different options. So type help and there's a few of the things we can do. Let's do help for some of the core functionality. Help space core. Interact, write. These are some basic commands that are going to be there available for us when we have interpreter. If you want to know what directory you're currently in, you can use present working directory also. I'm in the root of C. If you wanted to clear the logs in the box, well actually let's say you wanted to cat out a file. Cat, and Actually, first let me do an ls to see what files are there. Cat. Cat out auto execute.bat. Okay, that didn't work nearly as well as I'd hoped.
Try either capital A.
Yep. Huh. Oh, well, actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, that might actually be blank.
Oh, yeah, so 0.
I always noticed that both of them was 0, and so why am I typing them?
Try
Let's boot INI.
Yeah.
As you can tell, I didn't practice this demo. Yeah, boot INI, cat out the file, fun stuff. You can use clearrev. You can clear out the logs if you wanted to. On an actual legitimate pen test, I don't think you generally would want to do this because you might clear out something else that you don't want to clear it out. You can use the command git system because we may or may not be running a system right now. Git user ID, we are running a system. If we weren't running a system though, we might want to try git system because system technically has higher privileges than anything else, including admin. But we were already system, so that command wasn't all that useful, but we're doing it anyway. We can list processes on the box.
What process did you go in as?
For this particular one, this was that MS03 026. So the Windows DCOM, is that?
Service hosted? If you do a get PID, it's probably going to be 912. Maybe you could show 1024 is the second one, so it may want to do like a migrate.
Yeah, so we're going to do a migrate here. By the way, the reason you might want to migrate is depending on what service you've exploited, it may crash, it may go down. Like let's say you use a browser-side exploit and you have a tip of the shell, well, they might close down Firefox and Internet Explorer, and you still want to have your session. So you got to migrate to something else. You can find out whatever processes are going by using PS. And Jeremy, what do you personally recommend as a good process to migrate into that's going to stay up?
Explorer is usually up.
Unfortunately, no one is logged in, right?
Okay. How about LSAS? It runs a system,
So
it's
so 692.
yeah. If you're pretty sure you're not going to do anything that might crash the service you're in, if you crash LSAS, then I think like 30 seconds after you crash it, Windows reboots. So
Let's be careful.
it may or may not be the right choice depending on the situation,
All right, and now hopefully,
but it's not going to shut down on you. I mean, unless they shut down the box.
okay, now I'm part of LSAS, so I'm not working in its context, and now they can close down the original service I had open, and I can hopefully still have a session going. And from the process list, you can also tell I'm probably running VMware there. Okay, so I'm in, and I can hopefully get around and do a few other things. I'm trying to think of what all other functionality I wanted to show off.
Good question, actually.
Yes.
How does that work? How do you migrate PIDs like that? I mean, I know that whenever you exploit a process, you get whatever that process's context is. You get their like the user, the everything, the same PID. But how do you actually migrate PIDs? That's just.
See, I'm not quite sure on the Windows internal enough. I don't know the low-level stuff enough to be able to answer that question. Do you?
I can't answer that.
It's magic.
It's magic.
I
I mean, do
think
they just
what
spawn a new LSAS with bit attached or something?
Well, I believe what they do is they inject a DLL into
Oh.
the target process.
Yeah.
So, for example, in LSAS, they would inject a DLL into that, and then migrate to that process, and then undo what they did to the first process.
And that wouldn't set up any kind of alarms or anything?
It depends.
Okay.
If you have something watching for that, it will. And so if you have like heuristic-based antivirus, it might detect something like that. But see, when you're running a system though, you're running it down at the kernel level,
Well,
so it's kind of hard to detect it.
Let's do small, cool, normal commands you might want to use in Interpreter. Let's do a hash dump. Here's the Windows hashes, the LM hashes, as well as the NTLM hashes. I happen to have a account created called some user. That's the hash for it. Now I could probably go into John or someplace else. Now if you don't mind leaking information all over the internet, another thing you could do is go into a web browser someplace. I'm fearful what that interaction might be. And do a search for the hash. I'm trying to figure out what it is. Based on this response, the password is password. I have had pretty good luck actually just Googling for hashes like that, depending on how bad it is.
it takes a lot of time, right?
We actually have a whole class on password cracking that Martin Boss, Alex, and myself did. But that's hash dump, always a useful thing to do. Let's do a load, and we can load in new modules that aren't in here by default. Here's a few of the ones we could load. Incognito and a few other ones I wanted to show at a later time. Incognito is neat. If you're on the domain and you're in like a file server, you can like say, oh, this admin's logged in. This is their token. I can grab it and then use and impersonate them on other machines. But that might be a thing for a later class. What we want to load right now is Sniffer, because who always here for the Sniffer class? Okay, just you two.
Yep.
Senior officers got to represent, right?
Yeah.
Represent. Okay, so we're going to load Sniffer, and then we're going to do Sniffer interfaces. What are we going to sniff on? All right, well, we only have one option, so we're going to sniff on that one. So Sniffer, and we're going to use dump. We're going to specify interface 1, and we'll dump it to root my PCAP, because I need to dump it someplace. Okay, didn't like that. What did I mistype? Oh, I think I missed something. Oh, sorry, I missed some commands there, guys. I meant to type sniffer start 1. And now we're starting to actually sniff stuff. We do sniff status. Sniffer stats 1, and see how many packets we actually got. And we can let that build some. It's a little bit slow going right now. Now we can actually dump that up. So let me actually up arrow until I get back to that command that will hopefully now work. I can dump out that PCAP file, and I can stop my sniffer. Now it's stopped, and let's actually go look at that file. My PCAP file, open in Wireshark, ignore the Lua error, and here's some of the traffic that's going on. I can now do some things like look for passwords that are in there. If I wanted to, I could load it up in EtherCap or anything you learned in the Sniffers class. Fun, fun, fun. Okay. That's using the Sniffer module. Another one you can do, which is fun, is do a screenshot and what did it say it put it?
You had it selected.
Was that?
You had it selected. It's right below that one. So page what thing?
Haven't Having some problems navigating here. Okay, one of these is the one hopefully I just made, and the screensaver's up so it doesn't show you a whole lot of anything real pretty. Okay, so that's just doing a quick screenshot. You can also, by the way, and I don't have anything ready for this, if you want to do a bunch of commands back to back that are interpreter commands, you can create a resource file and specify some file that it's all in, but I don't have anything ready right now, but that's just a text file of a bunch of different commands all in one. Another thing you can do that's fun is, if you're into rap music, run VNC. Okay, yeah, that one doesn't deserve a laugh. And you can actually get a VNC session on the remote box. Come on, wake up. Seems to be having problems getting video from the remote box. This worked real well at home though. I just heard some kick over there. It's kind of worrisome. Anyway, hopefully that would be better for you. What it should have gave you was a VNC session onto that remote box. So let's go on anyway. Just take it on faith that a lot of times that will work.
Do you want to try some password cracking?
Actually, yeah. You want to switch over and do some stuff?
Yeah, I can try it for now. See if I can remember how to do it. Are your passwords uncrackable? Where I usually try this?
Well, one of my passwords is password, so I hope not.
Okay, alright. We'll give it a work. Give it a shot. Alright, so
I aim not to have demo fail, so you know. I know whatever is stupid easy.
there's another hash dump in here. So like if we background this, I don't think it'll work from here yet. So we'll have to say background and then creds. Oh, okay. So I usually use the post-exploit module hash dump.
I'm fine if you crack the IronGeek one too, because it's one I use a lot, but I always use it only in demos, so it's fine if you crack that one.
Oh, okay.
Any of them fine.
Either way, when they dump, they actually put the creds into here, and I'm not sure if the Mimikatz module will too, but
So I was having a problem getting Mimikatz to actually work for me. If you know how to get it to function, that'd be cool, because Mimikatz, it's a cool tool. It actually, you'll forget cracking it, it actually pulls the passwords out of memory.
yeah. So let's see. Well, let's see. We
What's
got
it called?
Mimikatz. There's also a Windows Credential Editor, but Mimikatz has a module built into, there's a Mimikatz module built into Metasploit. There's not one necessarily for Windows Credential Editor, but both of them use techniques to pull passwords just straight out of memory.
Wow.
we on we were on Pony, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do a
Actually, though, you might be better at luck for the Mimikatz stuff though if you use number 2, since it's a Windows 7 box.
Okay, let's give it a try. So we'll do sessions interact with 2, and then we can do run, post. Oops, what am I doing here? Now, let's see, it's post gather, post windows gather, I think.
And see, this is the reason I keep all these notes, because I don't remember any of it until I need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you have a big gun like Jeremy on Hot Dial.
Well, it's good. Thanks for coming by, Wade.
I
Thanks for coming by,
don't
Jeremy.
remember it either. I just have to search for them too.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming by, man.
I just do this to try to make everybody on the video scream at me. It's blah blah, idiot. Let's see.
Oh, but people on YouTube would never make a rude comment about you making a mistake.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, it was post Windows gather hashtag. I guess I shouldn't have second guessed myself.
Are we having fun so far?
So it says that we don't have enough rights. So Let's do a get system, see if that'll fix that. And it
Yay,
says-
we got system.
Is that why BNC wasn't running earlier?
Oh.
Maybe. Okay, so it uses a slightly different method than the default hash dump, I believe. And there's a blog, I think, on maybe on Rapid7 site that talks about the differences between the two. And they're slight, but they can be important differences sometimes. Either way, it'll get it into the creds table. So if we background this and then look at the creds table, it should be in there. Well, you can see it actually concatenated it, so now we got a whole big pile of passwords. And so we can use an auxiliary module. So let's use auxiliary, and then I can never remember, so I'm just going to search for it. Let's see. So if we search for JTR, I believe that'll get us there. Yeah, there it is. Auxiliary analyze. Can't remember the second word. Use aux analyze, and then JTR fast mode. You can do a show options. And none of the options are required, but if you have your own dictionary, or if you want to use John's dictionary, which is password.lst, you can set the path and stuff. And we'll just, if he has some really easy passwords like password, we'll just give it a try the way it is. So we hit run, and the module is smart enough to know that it goes to the creds table to get the hashes to try to crack. So it's all kind of tied in together. It's pretty nice how they got it all set up. And it cracks something. It flew by too fast.
All right, scroll up. I may need to change the password because actually that one of my VMs I actually do use for other things. So we'll find
Okay.
it.
Oh, there's your password though.
Yeah, password. Got that one. So it's cracked 4 of them.
Well, it looks like it's saying they're blank.
Oh, actually, yeah, that is true.
Oh, okay. So it's like right here. You see where it says like IRD guest and guest. Well, typically the guest accounts would have a blank password on a lot of boxes, so that makes some sense. And there's the password that he was talking about earlier. So
But-
here's try Mimikatz.
Yeah, let's try it. What's the worst thing that happen? I guess I'd have to change. Actually, no. If you get, yeah, I'll do it anyway. I don't care.
Okay. Just go ahead and start.
I don't think I have any systems that are
Go ahead and start changing them right now from your phone. Just start changing. Who knows if it'll actually get it? I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, but
Yeah, I had problems getting it to work, but I think I was also trying to get it to work at the time on an XP box, and maybe that XP is so old and ancient they haven't even bothered to made sure it worked.
So if you're not sure which modules you can load, you can just type in load tab and it'll tab complete. And then Mimikatz was on the list earlier, but after you load a module, it knows you can't load it again, so it won't show them anymore on the tab complete. So we load the module, and if you type in help, the module helps load in the order that you loaded them in. So you'll see that we loaded Mimikatz last, so it's the last one to show its help. And it has these different modules that use different techniques. So let's see. We can just try them all.
Yeah, well, go for the gusto.
Okay. So the good thing here is that it grabbed the LAN manager password. So if you have a tough password to crack, but you can use Mimikatz to get the LAN manager version, you can still crack it because the algorithm's too weak, and it only allows passwords up to 14 characters.
Split into 2 7-character chunks because of the
It's true.
mathematics of it. It's easier to crack 2 7-character passwords than it is 1 14-character password, and it's all uppercase.
Right. Yep. So you have a small character set, and you just crack 2 little passwords instead of 1 big one, which is quite a bit easier actually. So, all right. So there you go. There's the LAN manager password. So I guess we could just assume that was something that would be really hard to break. We'll just pretend. And let's see, did that show up in the creds table? I don't know if it feeds through like that. So we're looking for one of
And
these.
truthfully, I haven't messed enough around with the database functionality. I figured I should turn that on the very first thing just so I could play with it later.
Yeah, it looks like these have the LAN mans anyway. See how 4EE was already in there.
I believe it's, this particular one, it starts with the AAD, it means it's blank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's the 4E one, right? Those are all blanks. So, in that case, I guess that Mimikatz didn't really give us anything that we didn't already have. But it's a different approach, and the different tools will work in different situations.
I highly recommend you go out and actually read the entire Metasploit Unleashed site. And also, Dave Kennedy has a book that is a good reference for Metasploit. And full disclosure, yeah, he's a buddy of mine, so that's why I'm pimping his book.
Okay, so in this case, it pulled the TS PKG. It pulled the password.
Yep.
All right, so that one didn't require cracking using that method.
And now you know that that password.
There we go. It's on video. Well, you can change it before you upload the video, right?
Yeah, I can. And I want to use that on some things, but now I have to come up with a new one for that one. But Bob Swim.
Okay.
All right, who here knows who Bob is on podcasts? All right, Bob is the term that people use whenever they want to claim it was someone other than themselves. It was Bob that did it. And my buddy Zach gave Bob a last name. Someone who is not me, Bob Swim.
All right, so there we go.
But
So
there you go.
pull
So
them
that
out
one
of
looked. That was which one did you use to actually pull?
TSP package or TSPKG and WDigest, both.
If you think about it, would you
Pull
email
it
me
out.
the commands you used? 'Cause I'll add them in the notes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I
Thanks,
can,
man.
I can just run back through on here too for the video. It was, well, I'll say that. So the first thing I did did load Mimikatz, which I can't do right now because it's already loaded. Well, maybe I can unload it.
So what exactly does that program do, the Mimikatz?
Well, it is a module that knows how to grab the hashes, or in this case, the passwords from areas other than the what hashdump does.
Okay.
So hashdump is pulling the hashes out of the registry hive, I guess is the best way to put it. And the post version of hashdump, the actual module that we ran, the post module, it can pull them also, I think, out of the local secrets, was it LSA or whatever that stands for. So, but Mimikatz is kind of a module that just specializes in getting the passwords. So we not only can get them from both of those places, but it can also go into memory and try to extract them directly from memory. It does a few more tricks,
Right.
and that's all it does, really, I guess, is it really focuses on getting those passwords out. So it's really nice module to have if you have system privileges. But without the get system, it's not going to work.
Right.
So if you can't get the system, then you don't even really bother trying at that point. You could just try to work on elevating your privileges to make life a lot easier. All right. What else you want to show?
What do you want to show? You got the floor for the time being. I got some.
Okay.
I got some stuff I'm gonna show in a bit about using scanners, and I'm gonna show how to make some Trojan EXEs, and then a little bit about Armitage, and then we'll probably go cut it. And if they want to do a second one, we cover more complex things.
Yeah.
Do you work for beer?
Scanners.
Beer we can manage. In my case, mead, but that gets kind of pricey too.
Well, I can run through kind of how I would have gotten up to this point. Sometimes that's helpful to know, like, you sit down and the hardest thing to do is type the first sentence, right?
All right, you have that.
So-
Just talk nice and loud so we get you on the
Okay.
permanent recording, and looks like I got you in frame.
So one of the first things you can do is kind of get an idea of what the network looks like. And Nmap is integrated into Metasploit. So if you do a DB Nmap, we were on 10.1.1.0 network. And Adrian explained earlier how he knew that. And so we can do the default scan. And it can take a little while depending on congestion, and the biggest factor is how many boxes you're trying to scan. So we're looking at about 253, I suppose, here. If you leave out the broadcast address and 0 and stuff like that.
Yeah, my home network, it seems to go through that one pretty quick. So we may have more congestion depending on what people are, what kind of packets people are throwing.
Yeah, I think it's smart enough if you kill it and then go look at the host table, it'll have what it got up to that point. So we could try that if it gets too bad here. I guess I could
could have not been so lazy about just typing DBN map and then address, and we could have done things like turn on the verbosity
And see what was going on.
yeah, like you can't.
But unfortunately, you can't do that from inside of
in the interactive.
that. And the one thing I want is a less command inside of Metasploit. Someone suggested me using the screen command to be able to simulate something similar to it, but I still think that'd be clunky by comparison to just being able to type something, type it into less and have it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it actually got done in about a minute, so that's not too bad. So it loads all that information into some tables that are built in. If you're not sure what the tables are, just type help, and then I think it's around the second from the last block. Yeah. Whoops.
Can you specify something specific like help space something for it, like help space database or?
Yeah, if you're just totally lost, just notice right here it has like host, loot, node, services, and I cut off creds. I wish I could scroll up just a little bit, and maybe we can see that one. I make this full screen without messing up the camera. There we go. So there's the creds table that we were looking at earlier, and then here's the other ones. So if we do host, and there they are. And you can see it gathered a lot of information on them. It basically runs, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like nmap dash sv and then maybe some of the scripts and dash o. I think it's kind of like saying that last time I looked at it. All right, and then the services table will be filled in with all the services, and it'll be sorted by the IP address going down the left-hand side. So Adrian was targeting the, was it DCOM?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe up here on some of these
It's
Windows boxes.
MS03 dash underscore 26, or you can always use MS 08067 on that box.
I think that targets this service here, one on the 135.
Yes, the
remote procedure call, and then there's
yeah, the DCOM one definitely does.
and then there's the
Blaster one used it.
you can tell it's running this Samos or Windows file sharing because it's 135, 139, and 445 are all illuminated on these different boxes. So that's the file sharing giveaway. So that would have told him that there was the potential there for those exploits because those services are running and they're open to the network. And then I believe there's actually a scanner, so this is probably a good spot to.
Well, you know what? We might as well do the scanner, and then we'll probably take another break at that point. Then we'll get into Trojans.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll get into some other scanners. He showed using Nmap a little bit there. So I'm going to back out of this particular module, and we're going to set up a scanner. So we're already in MSFConsole, and let's make sure we have a database running, which we already know we do. So database is running. So find what workspace we're in. For instance, you have different jobs going, different things, different like clients. You can keep different workspaces for data. Right now, I'm just using the default workspace, and we'll just keep it with that. But you can create multiple workspaces.
Well, I left something off. I think if you go to the creds table now, you'll see the passwords that we cracked earlier in there too. So that while you're running through those tables, it's like a
Those are hosts. You see, you always populated them.
track creds,
Creds.
and then see where it says the pass column. See how it says like some user password down at the last three rows. So once you crack the passwords with the JTR fast, it'll go back and fill the creds table in with the passwords. So just a little side note. See, I'm really big on staying organized because you get lost when you're in these.
If you have to do it professionally.
You're in these assessments and you spend 90% of your time writing everything down
Now I'm just going to use a different scanner.
and trying not to giggle.
I was going to use auxiliary scanner, SMB, and SMB version. And the reason I chose it was I figured it'd be a quick scanner to use and show off. Set, and we'll set the all hosts to 10.1.1. Anything really at this point, but I just use number 1 just for the heck of it. And 24, so basically a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, and set that up, and we're going to set threads. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna try that trick with the uppercase again. I like that. Thank you for telling me about that.
Oh,
I'm gonna set it for 100 threads.
really understand that one.
We're gonna run it. And I was gonna show host, but what you're gonna see here in a second is yeah, it gives me a little bit of a guess. This was going to return a little bit faster than the Nmap scan, but it's just a small network. The Nmap scan was perfectly serviceable for what we were doing.
If you have a really good sized network, it doesn't hurt to turn the threads up as well. Maybe.
How you normally take the threads before it's like insane?
You know what? I'm pretty conservative because I don't want to hurt anything, but I use 10 all the time, and that's a little higher than what I've seen recommended. But I've seen some people do some stupid numbers like 100. I wouldn't think that's a good idea.
Okay, at that point, I think we can take a break for like 10 minutes. Is that cool? All right, break for 10 minutes. That puts us back at 57. Okay, if all the advertisement Elgato gets for me in these videos, they really should, sponsor me or something. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to show making some Trojan EXEs. The reason I'm starting with a web service is because, well, I need a way to get the EXE off there and onto a Windows host. So what I've had to do is go in there and say service Apache 2 start. Now I've already done that, so it's not actually starting it again. But we have to do that, or you can use what I have on the cheat sheet, which is the whole /etc initd Apache 2 start bit. Next, what we want to do is we're actually going to have to get an exe to demo this on. But before that, let's change directory and do all of our work inside of var www. Now I've cleaned it out since we were in there last, so it doesn't have anything. I'm using the wget command to get an exe, and this is the one that they recommend from Metasploit Unleashed, and it is, very workable. The earth.li, and I have this all on the sheet. We will get putty and backdoor it. File not found. So some reason there I probably mistyped it. So if you can help me figure out where I mistyped it really quick. .exe. There we go. Now we have an exe in this directory that we can try to backdoor. Now there's two different ways we can go about doing this. One is to use MSF payload and then use MSF encode. The way these work is MSF payload allows you to dump a payload in different formats. So let's say I did MSF payload and told it I wanted to use Windows, interpreter, and unfortunately the way I'm doing this I have to type it all out. Reverse _ TCP lhost equals and whatever the IP address is, which I believe hasn't changed. I had to reboot this machine because of some problems, so let's make sure. Yep, 132. So 10.1.1.132 for me. For you, it's whatever your box comes up as. And then I do L port. And for giggles, let's go ahead and use 443. What's 443 normally used for? SSA. Well, SSL, or specifically TLS or SSL protected HTTP traffic. And we can now say that we want to run that, and see what it actually gives us. Sorry, raw format, I believe is what the R actually stands for. Is it not, Jeremy? The R.
Raw.
So that's the raw format, which what I just did is going to generate a bunch of crap to the desktop. Let's instead of doing that, to give you an idea what payload looks like, what is the one for PHP? Do you remember? Well,
MSF payload -L.
let's find out what we got. Because you can actually output as this raw and use that as the exe.
Oh,
That's listed
you
for-
can just do a -H, I think. Actually, just to see.
Yep. Okay. So it looks like if we want to get like the Perl or PH or Python version, it's all in here.
There's no PHP,
I
right?
thought there should have been a PHP one. All right. Well, let's just do what it would be if it was Perl. So I'm going to use Perl format, and this is throwing out that particular payload in a Perl version that we could then throw into a Perl script. So this is handy for that. Keep scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. You can also output like VB format and put it into Word docs. Though I've had very little luck with it when I've tried it, but it's doable in theory. I'm going to output to raw format, and I'm going to pipe that into MSF encoder and MSF encode and -E and tell it that I want to use the encoder x86 and Shikariganai. You know what? Now that I think about it, me typing all this stuff makes a whole lot of sense, and it's really boring to watch on the video, and you all can follow along here in a second. I have this open, and I'm willing to send this to whoever needs it. I'm going to copy and paste. Just make life simple for me. I will have to go in and edit some things, though, and I'll explain what I'm editing here in a second. But yeah, that's the command. So basically, I'm taking MSF payload, telling it what payload I want to use, and I have to tell it what IP address, which is my local IP address, 10.1.1.132, and tell it output raw format. Now I'm going to pipe that into MSF encode, tell it to use the encoder Shikariganai for a count of 3 times. Output format is going to be exe. This is the executable I want to use as my template, and I want to output it as putty.x. That's how it's in version name. The -K, that's not in the Metasploit Unleashed, but whoever runs the offensive security account told me about the K option. That says keep the functionality of the main exe. I think it may have been Mutz that was the one that told me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who runs that account. But the -K says keep the functionality. If you don't use the -K, it copies the icon and all that stuff from the exe, but not the functionality. Well, it's a quick sign that it's not the real exe if it doesn't function the way you expect it to. So that -K is important. And now if I execute that, I should have a Trojan exe that I can run. Now, since then though, they've gone and done it a different way as well. You can use something called MSF Venom, which combines some of both functionality. I'm going to take MSF Venom, and these commands are all on the sheet. And I just have to go in there and replace my IP address. But as you can see, you can specify the payload with the -P. We're going to tell it to use localhost 10.1.1.132, at least for me. And I'm going to tell it to connect back port 443 and use putty as my template, Shikariganai, 15 iterations. Instead of using C, it uses I, 15 iterations. Keep the functionality, that stays the same. Formats the exe, and I then pack that out into sum.exe. In theory, either one of these works the same. And that goes along. Now, let's get back into MSFConsole. And there's a few commands from MSFConsole we got to use. Now remember we're using the reverse TCP metinterpreter, so we have to have something listening on our box so we can actually catch it when someone runs that exe. So we're going to use see, I got that right. Exploit. Multi handler. We're going to set the payload to be Windows interpreter I wish it handled this a little bit better. Reverse TCP. Okay, got that set. I'm going to set my local host. Now, that's not. Hope I actually type what I'm supposed to type. One thing, I'm looking at this paper and not looking at my keyboard. And set my local IP address again. And now hopefully I can set L port to 443 and exploit, and that should be listening. That's doing its thing. Now I'm going to go over here and download some of those EXEs. Some.exe, I'm going to download it. It doesn't matter how you get on the remote distance box. You can hand them a thumb drive and say, hey, this EXE, you really want it. It's a game. Run it. And I combine the functionality with PuTTY, which is the most commonly used SSH client on Windows. So I'm going to grab both versions of that. Really, I should have only shown the Venom version, but they both should work. I'm going to open this up, and you see I have some EXEs in here. This is one I generated from way before, but there we have them. And now if I was actually to run them, you would notice that it does bring up PuTTY. But in the background, it also started off my interpreter shell and shoved the shell back to me. I opened up both versions. So if we go back here, you see at least one of them did function and did get the connection back to me. Let's do our sessions. Oh, actually, one of them automatically opened. It opened into it automatically. Let me do a background. And it only gave me one of them, but that's good enough. Let's go ahead and actually use that session. Interact with one, and I can use all my normal interpreter commands, but there's my shell from them running the EXE. There's all sorts of things from here we could use. Let's see, what should we do? What do I have set up? I thought there was other ones I had that I really wanted to show off. I don't see them there. Well, here's a fun one, and this is one someone interviewed me about. There was this bunch of interviews going around, all sorts of different little local TV shows about the Aurora exploit from a couple years ago. But the thing they were playing up about it was, ooh, people can watch you through your webcam. Most people don't care to watch you through your webcam. You're boring. They will ever steal your credit cards, use your machine as another bot, and the chances of you seeing a really hot co-ed on the other end of that webcam is very unlikely. You're more likely to see me or Brandon. But that's the thing they wanted to play up for the news. So I'm going to show you some functionality you can use with webcams. Let's do a webcam list. Now, this will only work for you if you're in VMware and you've shared your webcam via USB with your local VM. For me, I've done that, so there we go. Well, I want to use the FaceTime one, so I'll do a webcam snap 1 and take a snapshot, and there I am. You can also monitor stuff using a script. I've showed you before about using resources, which is basically a collection of interpreter commands back to back to back to back. You can also use scripts, and one that's popular is webcam. But let me do this first. Let me do run, and I'm going to do a couple tabs to see what my options are. There's all sorts of scripts that people have had for like post-exploitation. These are things like collecting credentials, checking whether or not you're in a VM, messing around with Event Manager, just a ton of different ones. Oh, get the GUI. This is the one I tried to use before with VNC. And you know what? Actually, let me see if I can get that one to work this time around. Run VNC. Let me show you how to walk this way. There's only one person in the room old enough to get, maybe two, okay. Okay, try to start up VNC, don't know if it's actually functioned, but it's another script that's out there.
I think you have to wait for a minute.
There we go.
Yeah.
And there you see, this screen is the same as that one. But yeah, that's a VNC session into it, started from Interpreter. Now let's use the one I meant to do, and that is run webcam. Oh, you use the -H for help to give you some information on them. Come on, return. But that's how it works if you want to change any options. I'm just going to go with run the webcam. And watch the person on the other end of the webcam. I probably should have turned down resolution and so forth to make it a little bit better. And egads, my weight loss plans need a little bit better. It's like, maybe a little lift and tuck. Okay. But that's simply making a little Trojan DXE. Fun stuff. And I have only one last thing I want to show, and then I think I'll pass it off to Jeremy for anything he wants to show. So let me close out of that. Die. Let's go ahead and bring up Armitage. And to make sure everything's working with Armitage, we're going to do a service. Oh. I'm having a real problem typing tonight. Okay, go to a service, Postgres, start, service, Metasploit, start, so it may already be started, and start up Armitage. Take all the defaults to connect, say yes and start it up. And we're going to use this GUI. And I'm not going to show much about Armitage, and I'm going to show something you should probably never do with Armitage. But we're going to do a Hail Mary and try to pwn the entire network as fast as we can and get into as many things as we can. Gives you a nice pretty GUI for getting into everything. It already has a bunch of hosts because of our database that we populated before. But you know what? I don't actually want the stuff in here, so I'm going to Control A, select everything. Hosts, and I'm going to remove the hosts. Come on, do your thing. I'm going to do a host, and I'm going to do an nmap scan, and he showed you how to do this all from MSFConsole before. But we're just going to do it from inside Armitage. 10.1.1.1/24 sided notation, whatever your subnet mask is. I could have put a 0, I could have put, you know, whatever. And it's doing its scan. And now if we all did this, our network is going to go to a hell in a handbasket very shortly. And by the way, I'm going to do this, and before I do this, everybody has their own boxes that are on my network patched, right? I'll be gentle, let's just say that. Actually, I'll show some of the finer details you can use first. Armitage we might want to cover in a whole different class. I've actually hung out with a Mudge some, and he's a good guy. Does a lot of work on, you know, he's made Armitage a really cool, nifty GUI. hopefully, eventually, this all gets populated, and I'll have my list of devices here. While we're waiting, though, anybody got any questions? What is the meaning of life? What is best in life, Conan? Something like that. I'll take this time to remind you that we'll be having a class on Nmap, and I think scanners in general, sometime hopefully this February, sponsored by our local ISSA chapter. Have they gotten back to you at all about a room for that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe February after Super Bowl, and it's the current target
February after Super Bowl.
after Super Bowl. So
And is it like a donation to Johnny Long's charity,
Mhm.
correct? How much?
40.
40 to Johnny Long's charity
Yeah.
is the ticket cost, and
Yeah, we're hoping to get a room big enough to hold 50 people,
We have that here.
and just make it even $2,000. So
okay.
they like be on a Saturday. It's a lot of people work during the week, so
But Louisville people don't like to come over here, Brandon.
We gotta make them come up here.
well, yeah, Sullivan University might donate a room that's
Yeah, Sullivan's University's one is pretty nice.
it's central, just off the highway, so it's pretty reasonable. We might try that again. They were pretty nice last time, gave us a double room that they had taken the divider out of. Try to get some pizza in there. ISSA bought pizza last time around, so.
Yeah, the ISSA is definitely worth the price of membership for me, in food cost alone.
Yeah, definitely.
And I really mean to continue this tutorial, but this Nmap scan is taking its sweet time.
Yeah, we got time. I'm still trying to get the one thing I wanted to show to work, so.
Dr. Doyle, what would be the odds of securing funds to have Jeremy come here and do an 8-hour class?
How much funds are we talking about?
$1 million. That's like,
Oh, I don't know. I like the equipment idea better, but, yeah, we can do something. Well, do you all know what it is that you wanna have a class on? Do you know what you wanna do, like, more of
Start
this?
like really basics. Start with the general basics and then work our way up to some cool tricks.
'Cause there's a lot to the basics.
Yeah, we definitely need to cover the
It is-
basics. The basics
it's
are,
super bad 'cause it's not as cool, but,
you have to understand, yeah, you have to
That's the
understand.
doing a basic scan too. Hopefully that returns fast. Oh, completed scan. It finally got me something. Alright.
yeah.
And the other one in the background may fill out information as time goes by. Alright. We can change the layout here. Make it a hierarchy. So make it that's a stack right now. Make it a circle. Hierarchy doesn't give us anything. I think that's probably like network hierarchy layers. As far as like this is routed, this is something else. I'm not sure. I haven't ever actually got to give me any really thing useful.
Oh, yeah, I think it's just the order of the IP addresses if they're all on the same subnet.
Okay.
Well, I haven't tried that with maybe trying to set up like 2 subnets and then seeing if it displays a little bit differently.
It says Nmap's done with those hosts. This scan is still doing its thing, and I'd have a lot more information. Oh, there we go. The larger Nmap scan finally worked. You notice it did OS detection. It has an idea now what particular host is running. I can right-click on something and find out what services were on it. You can also find one and go to attacks, find attacks that it thinks might be possible based on what ports are open. Now I can right click and there's a couple different attacks it thinks, hey, you can try this one might work. And breaks them down by category. And of course you can also do this, Control A, select everything, attacks, Hail Mary. Full of disgrace in this case. And it goes through trying to find everything that it could possibly exploit and then starts firing off the exploits to try to own everything it sees. it should own a bunch of Windows boxes that are out there, and also a Metasploitable one. Assuming that my, you know what? I better double check to make sure this machine hasn't fallen off the network. Yeah, this machine is the mouse has stopped working on the host box over here.
Jeremy, do you do stuff with
This is why you don't do what I just did.
What do they give? What do they give you for that?
I go to school there, so we just, they help me out with getting classes and schedules and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's
so you coach with
continuing.
the CCDC?
I'm not a coach. I just help them out with, I teach one class a year.
This is going off over here on his computer.
What?
It's his antivirus is.
Oh, his antivirus is freaking out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it would. And unfortunately, my host box is now screwed up.
Yeah. I think the whole subnet just got
Roasted.
You guys good?
The subnet
The subnet just got
not working.
Hail Mary.
Oh.
Like I said, Hail Mary full of disgrace. And let's try everything. Alright, that's not going to function real well for us. This is a worst case scenario. So I'm going to stop the video for a second, and we're going to try a quick reset and do it, and then that's all I have. So let me stop this, and well, I'm starting this thing back up again, and I decided to punt because that just totally destroyed my VM box. Okay, so I have one scan of one particular IP address. I can do a, well, I've always showed how to find possible exploits on one. So let me do a Hail Mary on just one particular machine.
Really? That does really?
Well, I had 6 different versions of that same vulnerable VM, plus a Metasploitable instance, plus whatever laptops you had out there, plus the VMs you had running on your laptops. And you see it gives me a little indicator that I now pwned, and I have different interpreter sessions I can now get here. I can automatically do a few things. I can escalate the privileges. Something went wrong, didn't like that. Let's do an interact via interpreter shell, and have a nice little tab interface down here, and there's interpreter like we used to, and I can do all the things I did before, but in a nice little GUI interface. But that is the very low level of using these tools, using Armitouch. And I think I'm done with my section. I'm going to post my notes later on. Hopefully you can send me any notes that you might have, Jeremy.
Yes.
And Jeremy, did you want to show some stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Do you need your laptop up here?
Yeah, I can try to wing it on yours, but, well, no, this will be easier. I already have a website running and all that stuff. So
All right,
I'll do that.
let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to slowly shut my stuff down here then and move back there. And I need to get your laptop hooked up, so I'm going to stop streaming.
With a person,
And they get you in the
and you need
office.
permission to do that in the contract. So,
Oh, by the way, I'd just like to announce that Jeremy Druin has his webcam blocked with what appears to be a Barbie Band-Aid.
Band-Aid,
Thinking
yeah.
Yes.
about
My-
Hold on.
my
Or
daughter-
adhesive bandage.
My daughter donated to the cause, very proud of
Don't
that one.
feel,
Have a seat, bud.
All right.
I'll make sure you're in frame, and then
Or if we
I'll
want to
move out of the
demolish
way.
a new parking lot and erect a
This is
computer
good.
science
Yeah,
technology
okay,
building
So you
over
see
there,
right there.
I could do up to probably 100 million.
yeah, Adrian.
I just didn't put my
All
screen
right,
doing this
well,
all day, so-
we'll try to go a little off script
You think they
here.
would do that?
So, let's see if I can get back.
I think they do whatever you want.
I don't know. That's
Would you take it to him?
yes.
Just keep it. We'll take it.
All right, so
Once I get out of this class, I'm gonna go buy my ticket.
Adrian used this handler earlier. It was, it was the use, exploit, oops, have a slash in front. Use, exploit, multi handler is how we got here. So we're already in it. You can do a show options or to see what's required. All right, so what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to use the PHP executable that we were talking about earlier. And Adrian had made an executable as just a regular C executable in Windows, right?
Yeah.
And then he used that to get an interpreter shell.
Well, actually, it was a PuTTY. Whatever programming language you go PuTTY in.
Oh, okay. Right. So I guess it's a C program, and you attach the
Yes.
payload to it using the -K option and the template. So what we're going to try to do here is instead of having to trick somebody to actually execute the script on their end, we're going to see if we can find a vulnerability in a website where we can upload a file to the website, and then we'll just browse to it, which will trigger the exploit and cause the exploit to connect back to our box. So you don't need someone on the other end. Of course, you do need a vulnerable web server. In this case, we're going to use PHP. So for the website, we're going to use Matilda. And is everyone in here familiar with this platform? So this is, if not, I'll run through it real quick. But basically, it's a large website over, I think, 100 pages now that is designed specifically for you to run on localhost or on a local network. And it has the vulnerabilities already built into it and well documented on how they work. So you can look at the menu and you can see it's broken down by the OWASP Top 10 2010, and it has just an absolute ton of vulnerabilities. And this was originally written by Adrian, actually, and then he...
But you have way more hours of work in this than I ever did.
Well, he handed the project off to me, and we decided to make a Matilda 2, which is this one, and yeah, I've added a few things to it. So we're going to go to the Others menu, and there's a one in here for local file inclusion, which will make this a whole lot easier. Oops, excuse me, Others and Unrestricted File Upload. I said the wrong path. The file inclusion page talks about file inclusions. There's also a Help Me button if you're not quite sure what to do on the page, and then you can enable the hints up here at the top. The hints are going to change. They automatically load based on the page you're on. So for example, this page has these 3 vulnerabilities, so the page loaded those 3 hints for you, and you can click on those sections and it'll walk you through you know, in this case, creating a shell or using laudanum from Kevin Johnson's group or whatever. And then if there's videos, and if you have a network connection, which I don't because Adrian was doing Hail Marys, so disconnected, it'll automatically load the video here for you so you can watch the video in line. And so I think the hint system will kind of get you through all the
network connection?
I did. Well, I was afraid the abuse would slow my box down, so there was a lot of action going on. So we have this this page that has some problems. By default, it actually is pretty safe. You try to upload something and it'll only upload it into a temp directory. There's, you know, so you can't get it to execute because you can't browse to it. So we'll fix that problem here in a minute. There is a vulnerability on this page. We'll take advantage of it. All right, so we're going to need a handler, and we're going to need a payload. So we'll make the payload first. And we're going to use the PHP interpreter reverse TCP. This is a web server. You have to kind of anticipate that it's going to be firewalled like crazy. So you're going to want to try to use the reverse one right out of the gate. If the firewall allows egress, it'll let the web server call back to us, and the firewall won't stop it since it's the web server that'll be initiating the connection to us. It will not be an unsolicited request. So the reverse is the way to go in this scenario. And on the L host, it's going to be my local box here. It's 192.168.56 domain because I'm using the VirtualBox host only network. And then the L port, we're going to use 4443. So we send it out as type raw, or R, and we're just going to put it into a temp file. The reason we're doing a raw is PHP code is just text, so you don't want to turn it into an executable or whatever the other options are. And we'll wait for a while, and it should end up in the temp directory. All right, so then if we did like a cat m.php, should be able to see it because it is plain text. So there you go, you can see it starts off with the PHP and then it has a bunch of code in it. All right, so we have our payload in the temp directory. We don't have anybody listening right now. We're gonna need to start this listener up. So we do a set payload and we copy this payload that we used earlier, or type it if you're brave. And then also copy the L host and the L port. So you do a set L host and 192.168.56.102 and set L port, oops, 4443. Do a show options. So there's 192.168.56.102 and I think it matches, and then there's the 4443 and it matches there. Start the handler up with exploiter run. Okay, now the website. So if you look at the web page and you look at how it uploads, let's see, we could just upload some garbage or something. Let's see, let's do, oops, excuse me, let's do echo, hello, hello, there we go, into hello. Okay, the page is going to give us a bunch of hints. So it's going to tell you that the page was uploaded to this temp directory first, and then it got moved over to this other temp directory of the user that's running the web service, and you're not going to be able to browse to that. The Apache web server is not going to serve that file if you try to browse to it. So it's not, doesn't do us any good, because even though we can upload the file, we can't execute the file. So what we need to do is we need to be able to control where the file ends up on the web server itself. So let's take a closer look at this page and how it works. So I'm proxying everything through Burp Suite just to make this a little bit easier. You can use Firebug or you can use whatever tool you would like, but since I have Burp Suite running anyway, I'm just going to uncheck the unhide hidden field on the options tab of the proxy. And that way, even though we're not intercepting it, as the traffic moves through the proxy, it'll unhide any hidden form fields for us. So if we just reload the page, actually let's just do it this way. We can see there's a hidden form field, and you probably already recognize what that field is. It's the place that the file is going to end up being uploaded whenever we upload it. And then there's some number here. Might imagine that's probably like file size or whatever. So why don't we try to get the file to upload into the root? And a legitimate question at this point would be, well, how do you know that that's the root? There's other exploits in the site that we can use to, or vulnerabilities I should say, that we can use to figure that out. So let's just presume we already figured that out to save time. If you want to look into that further, look into the security misconfiguration category, and you have information disclosure, and then you have several ways over here to start to figure out the directory structure and the paths. The PHP info page in particular should give you the web root. Alright, so we're going to upload that file we created called the m.php and upload that to the server. And it tells us that it did end up in the root file system of the web server's root. Okay, so let's open up a new tab. Actually, I'll copy this so I don't have to type. Okay, so we'll go back to the handler after giving that a minute to run, and we can see that we have a interpreter shell on the web server, and then we can just follow the normal process from here. So you do your get PID and get UID. And then, so we'll do get sys Tim. I hate too tight. Uh-oh, did I do it wrong? Let's see. Interesting. It looks like we can't do get system through this particular interpreter. We can do a migrate. Nope. All right, well, we have a limited functionality interpreter shell, so the PHP one doesn't have the full functionality, but at least we got it. So there should be pretty good times from here. Of course, we have control of, you know, at this point, if we go back to here, we've pretty much got a shell on a web server, so it wouldn't take much just to go ahead and take another, put a permanent file in there that gave us a shell permanently. So to do that, the laudanum scripts are pretty good. They're already pre-written, and you just copy them up. And they have a provision in them for you to put the IP address that you want to allow to connect. So if other people try to connect to that server, then it won't actually let them connect. And that's good if you're on a pen test or something like that, because you really don't want to do something to a customer's box that someone else could take advantage of. And so I like that about the laudanum scripts.
There's also like we have to use a special client and a password to be able to get in.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And I believe, Adrian, you have a whole video on just web shells.
Web shells, yes, and I have a collection I keep of people who attack me. I automatically grab them and keep a copy so you can go look at what people are doing at the present time.
So you can go to irongeek.com and you can check out the video on the shells from the one of the cons, right?
One of the conferences, was it maybe an aid?
Could be. So, yeah,
Oh, I don't recall which now.
We're seeing it on the site. All right, well, there's a interpreter via remote file inclusion, whatever you want to call that, PHP exploit upload goodness. And that's good for a giggle or two, so I like that one. All right, do we want to do anything else with web stuff?
Yeah, if you want to, whatever, I'm here. You're here.
Does
I'm done with my part.
Does anybody have any requests?
I think that one was sufficiently
Play
friendly.
Misty for me.
What's that? Hell.
The with the PHP the file upload. Yeah, what was I gonna ask? Is it practical ever to not allow unsolicited outgoing connections from a web server? So that the whole reverse TCP thing that you did involved it connecting back to you. Would it make sense to actually just have it going through a NAT box completely and firewall itself from accessing the internet? Of course, the machine wouldn't be able to perform updates or something directly. It might have to go to an update server. But I'm just
you don't see. I don't see a lot of egress filtering on web servers. Typically, what I'll see is that people will put them into the DMZ area, and they will sort of abandon them within that DMZ zone, knowing that if they get breached, at least they've got some kind of containment.
Well,
the problem you run into is that typically on the intranet side is that, or if it's PCI or whatever segments they got. The problem is the web server has to somehow be able to talk back to the database server. And the database server typically is not DMZ because you don't want the
firewall
database
from the web server.
So what you really need to do is you really need to make sure that you kind of assume, like, okay, what is the worst case really? And the worst case really is somebody gets on the database, and you got to make sure at that point that the database is firewalled off from everybody else. So one of the ways to solve some of those kind of problems is to use some kind of authentication where you have two factors and you need tokens and things like that to get into the boxes. And that way they would physically need to have something if everything's working right, like some kind of a token, or they would need to have some kind of a smart card or something that would back up having passwords and stuff like that. But it's tough. I mean, if you get this level of control over a web server, that's pretty powerful. Web servers know a lot of stuff. They have a lot of good stuff in them. So
That they do. That's
why I always start there.
Yeah.
So,
It's just sufficiently
you know,
frightening.
and FTP, right? So FTP web servers are good services to exploit because they have information on the inside of them.
So by two-factor authentication, do you mean two-factor authentication just to use the server, or do you mean like with the database?
Yeah, with the, well, on the database side, so
Can't
if
get on
you
it.
needed two factors in order to just even log into it, just to even to SSH into it, for example.
Well, assuming that
having two factors and using things like private key authentication, where you're not really giving it a password per se, but you have some kind of a key on your machine that you would pass over, you know, like SSH-I option where you can pass a file instead of a password. So then at least, not to say somebody couldn't steal the SSH file, but it's like, how would they have that if you're on the inside? Now you're talking about doing attacks where you're trying to like do social engineering on the administrators, and you'd have to know that you're really just making it a lot harder on the attacker if you sort of separate these things out.
Yeah, I would not assume that Secure Shell would be running on these hosts, actually. I would just assume that the database server itself would be running, and maybe you could compromise that through the connection that the web server might have to the database server.
I don't know.
How to secure that and whatever. But
If it's Apache and it's running on Linux.
oh yeah, good luck, because Apache.
Are they going to disable Secure Shell? I mean, maybe.
Oh yeah, well, what I was thinking of, for instance, it's getting off into the weeds. I hope it's not really, but like an ESXi, say like or just for example, like a hypervisor, where you can just direct console access by, you know, once you say you VPN and get access to the hypervisor administration. That in itself is, I'm sure, fun to secure, whatever. But just being able to get that, you don't have to secure shell into these boxes. You could actually just drop into a console as if you're on a keyboard, you know, it's like a KVM almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just weird.
Physically separate access. You know, one of the things that you can do with Linux and Windows, the newer Windows, is you can run these servers that are single purpose. So you just load just the, you know, in Windows case, for example, you load just IIS and .NET and enough to get that running, and there is literally no way to even do graphical user interface because those like modules are not even installed off the installation media. You know, you have these very low surface area servers that can really mitigate a lot of these problems. You know, you talk about, well, they, you know, would a web server have SSH? Well, yes, because the operating system comes with it. But if you use one of those stripped down operating systems, then it probably wouldn't necessarily come with all that. But you still have to be able to administer your servers, and having administrators physically administrate the servers by walking up to it is not reasonable.
Well, that's why, again, with virtualization, you actually don't need that. You could actually, you would need a VPN connection, and then you would use, say, like the VMware's client, vSphere client, to actually connect back into the or use their web GUI, which is, I think, their current canon way of doing it, or whatever. And then you can actually just drop into a shell. It's a virtual shell, but it works like secure shells, but it's like a physical thing. You don't have to actually connect to the SSH service. But yeah, so I was just wondering if, particularly if partitioning, not allowing unsolicited connections out to the internet would be an answer to the reverse TCP. That was my main question. Sorry to get off on the weeds there.
Oh, yeah.
That was the main thing.
It's hard to stop a web server on reverse TCP because the web server's purpose is to make, to serve content.
Right, but I would assume that those connections would be solicited, as then there would be a stateful firewall that might be able to help with that. So on the firewall side, you might be able to partition it from doing unsolicited connections out.
Do no unsolicited connections out should work. I'm trying to think if there's anything
impractical.
Do not
Is it impractical, or that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe
I
it
think
might
that would
work. I don't know. I'm gonna try it, to be honest with you, because that was scary.
I think
it hit a little too close to home.
I think that's a good fix. Pretty good.
When you talk about the Ruby interface, what exactly are you referring to?
Which one?
Ruby interface.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you download Kali with the,
Good question.
you can actually go out and you can install the graphical version of Metasploit. So you
The community edition, or you?
yeah, the community edition,
Okay.
and then you'll have the community edition web interface, which is actually can kind of double as, you know how the MSFConsole has the host table and the creds table and all those tables where you can sort of keep track of what's going on as you go through the test. The graphical user interface extends that to have like a picture at the bottom. It's basically a spreadsheet of the services table, and then you can drill down on those machines and run attacks from the actual web console. So it's pretty neat. I don't have it loaded on this machine, unfortunately. I don't think so. Sorry, I should have brought that. You need a lot of space to install that stuff, especially in Expose, the scanner.
Oh, memory is a huge issue.
Yeah, and you need a lot of disk. It doesn't install unless you have, I think, 80 gigabytes. So, but that would be a good thing to try. Would be to get that running, and it may help see the steps of a pen test a little bit better from the discovery phase and then moving on. So, well, we're on the web server. I was trying to think of a way that we could get into the to the database since we're actually on here. So, I don't know if we can get a shell.
Is there a database running behind this multi-day?
Yes.
There's a database behind it?
Yep. So we can go to, say, like the login, and this page is vulnerable to SQL injection. So again, if you're not really sure, just click help me, and if you don't know, hey, it's vulnerable SQL injection, it tells you, you know, these are the things that you should try on this page.
So if you were to look at login.php or something, maybe that would have some indication as to how the login process is performed.
Yeah, since this page has SQL injection on it, and of course the dynamic hints will tell you too, because you know the hint only loads if the site already knows the vulnerability exists. So it's at least a little bit smart about that. So anyway, here's the SQL injection hint. You can read through that, and it has we have done whole classes on just the web stuff, and it takes a long time to go through it all. So I'll kind of leave that to the reader. But if I do a single quote injection there, you can see that this big giant error message dumps out, and it's already given you a lot of hints. So this error here, you have an error in your SQL syntax. You might recognize that it's MySQL servers, you know, default way of giving out error messages. It's probably even more blatant than that. Probably somewhere on here it says it's MySQL. Oh, here it is, right there. So if y'all can see that.
And it gives you the
Version and stuff.
client versions, yeah.
So we know it's MySQL. And we have a shell. Excuse me, we have a interpreter, and then I typed in shell, and now we've dropped into a shell. And we can see if like MySQL might be loaded. Never know.
So the client's in the path, the client executable.
Yeah, sometimes they'll have it in.
Sometimes if you're already in, so it's more convenient. Might have it under an XAMPP directory somewhere, under there. Might have the binary package with XAMPP.
Yeah.
Also, if you know that you're in an XAMPP.
Well, trying to run
directory.
that was a bad idea.
Oh no.
So, whoops. So let's try exploit again. See if we can get it running. And I'm not afraid to fail. We'll try a couple things. The only thing I was really prepared to do was the getting an interpreter, and then it's kind of like, well, now what? So, all right, that's probably been.
It's an unprivileged interpreter at that. The Git system.
Mm-hmm. So.
DIR, does that work? Does any interaction work with the shell, or is
That's
it
a good
just
question.
bomb out?
Yeah, I think it's just bombing out. So you get the shell, but then you can't run the shell. It's too bad.
You didn't make enough sacrifices before the demo gods.
That's right. Well, if I'm gonna be completely honest, I made this entire thing up over there while you were talking about the last thing. So I was asking for pie in the face, All right. So anyway, we'll give up on that. But it's a cool demo. I can, if you just want to do it the old-fashioned way, we can probably just dump out all the privileges using SQL injection.
I could just do it that way. Oh, that's sufficiently.
Well, there's the site is designed to have a lot of different ways to do the same stuff. The whole point of the site is to have a safe, legal place to practice on.
The tagline is
That's local.
"Ate up with suck," which I got
Yeah.
from Seth Magazine, I believe.
It's a
Yep.
straw man. Whatever.
Yeah.
That's but that also goes to the if you have a SQL injection vulnerability, then your database is already going to be available to whoever goes into the web server anyway. I mean, whatever the credentials that the app is using are going to be valid for you to be able to get data out of the database through the.
Right. So if the website's designed correctly, the credentials that the website's using to go to the database won't actually have any privileges, and it'll be in a role that is got one privilege, which will be execute on some kind of container. So if it's Oracle, it'd be like a package, but if it's SQL Server, MySQL, DB2, it'd be some kind of schema. And in the schema, there shouldn't be anything except for just some procedures or UDFs, user-defined functions, or other types of precompiled executables. Procedures aren't necessarily they can be made to be unsafe, but the reason they're more secure, in my opinion, than queries is that in order to execute a query, you have to have privileges to run the query. But by having privileges, you've already broken the least privilege rule. So with the procedures, you can give execute only, and then you can impersonate a user that has enough authority to run the procedures inside the procedure. So that's a way to mitigate all of this nonsense we're doing
like
now.
a run as type of situation with these.
Yeah, I think Microsoft calls it run as, and I don't recall what the other systems.
Masquerading or something. Or whatever.
It's impersonation is the key word. So they don't really delegate. And when the procedure starts, they become another user temporarily, and then they automatically revoke those privileges at the end of the execution of the procedure. So while you're in the procedure, you can do a lot of powerful stuff like select from tables, and you can actually see the tables exist and things like that. But when you drop back out of execution, you're just a regular old user again. So if you get a connection to the database with Toad or MySQL client or whatever, you can't do anything.
What was it, SQL.py? Sorry.
SQL.py?
Yeah. Well, you did a presentation actually for the ISSA once that was on SQL. SQL.py. It was a different.
Former presentation? Yeah, I might have core dumped that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But so, well, we'll have to pick this one apart if we're going to get the data out. Shouldn't take us too long. Maybe we can just make a little cheat sheet or something here. I'm going to offend all the V people real quick.
Or Emacs.
So, or whatever, yeah.
Kidding.
So.
I'm lame. I like Nano.
Oh, okay. Sorry. All right. I just need some place to write some notes down for not going to be here all day. So here's the query, and we'll copy that off. Just paste that. And also, let's figure out where our injection point is real quick. I mean, I think we kind of already know where it is, but we'll just drop a canary in there. And it just makes it easier to see. So there you go. So we know the injection point is exactly right there, because that's where the canary landed. All right, so then we'll start to build out our legitimate SQL statement here to try to get the data out. All right, so what do y'all want to try to get? Passwords or something?
Passwords always fun.
All right, passwords? Okay, let's try that. So I'm gonna close off the opening single quote here. Remember, we cannot control any of the text up to this point, so we have to leave that as is, because the first chance that our injection gets to do something is right here. So you can't mess with that. So I'm just gonna leave it. So I'll close it off. And we would need to figure out what the tables are that have the passwords in them. To do that, we can try to do like unions and stuff with the information schema. But we're just going to skip all that because we got lucky enough on the login page. The login page has access to the tables typically that have the credentials in them, almost always. So we're just going to assume that accounts as the right page. So, all right, and what we're going to figure out pretty soon is this page doesn't give any feedback. So we either have to use a blind injection or SQL map or something like that.
That was the one SQL map got by.
SQLmat, yeah, that's a fun tool. So we can try to use that, but for right now, we'll just use this. And how did we get away from Metasploit? This is taking an odd turn.
Sorry.
So,
I was wondering about securing the web server and then the database
Oh, okay.
server as well. And because it's usually not in the DMZ, the database server is usually in a more privileged area of a network.
True. Okay, well, this ought to at least get us logged in. Alright, so if we inject just this, well, not the blinking cursor part, but if we do just this part here, that's the payload, I guess you will. So our goal here is just to make a syntactically correct SQL statement so that we don't get the error message, and to also put in some kind of tautology, it doesn't matter, that makes the statement always true. Sort of classic SQL injection stuff. And if I did it right, it should work, I guess. You can turn off these bubble hints if you don't like them on the add pop-up hints, but they pop up whenever you're hovering over a vulnerable spot in the page. So try to make it as easy as possible. And that didn't work at all. So let's see.
Need an ending quote, single quote on that.
I was counting on the website supplying that for us, so of course that didn't work out too well, did it?
1 = 1 is common, right?
Let's try commenting out everything else and see if that works. So we'll just try a different technique. We have to, it's hard to see probably on the video, but you have to put this little extra space on the end here because it's a MySQL server and comment is dash dash space, not just dash dash. And if it's DB2, you have to be very careful that the comment starts on a new line. I found that out the hard way recently. So, okay, so that worked. So what the comment trick does is it gets rid of everything after the injection, and that sometimes works on these pages like this because the way this page works, if we looked at the source code, it could be a multi-staged login. Some sites will say check the username first, and then if that works, then they'll move on to a second stage where they'll check and see if the password works. So you have to be careful because the first injection you do may get past the SQL statement that you can see in the error message, but it may actually cause an error in the second SQL statement. So you may end up having to come up with these injections that are actually friendly enough to get past 2 SQL statements in a row. Or what I'll do is I'll just go pick on some other page, because if they have a problem in one area of the site, if you just gain access to it, it'd be very likely they kept writing the site the same way. So, 5-minute rule, I think Kevin Johnson originally told me this, 5 tries, 5 minutes, and I think Kevin said he got it from somebody else, so I don't know who to give credit to, but anyway, it's a good rule. You 5 tries or 5 minutes, and if that doesn't work, just move on, because you don't want to get buried in the test. So anyway, we're in as admin, by the way. And that's just really because I think the administrator happens to be the first record in the table because it starts with the letter A, so it's just blind luck. We could target a user. We could say where username equals admin and then comment, or 3 = 3 and then comment out the rest.
I think my original script didn't happen because it was the first account I created.
Yeah, it could be. That account, and actually I think the other accounts, I actually kept those in the second version for the most part. I think I might have changed some of the blog entries or something like that, or made more of them, but all those accounts are, for the most part, are still in there. So, all right. Well, we never did get the password though, but at least we're in the site. Let's try one of the other pages. This one's kind of blatant. SQL injection, extract data. So again, try SQL map against the login page because it can do those blind injection techniques very quickly, so you don't have to sit there all day and type all that junk out. And so it will be able to pull the data. We've done that demo before. All right. Well, we'll just pick on this page and do the same thing real quick. Let's see. Okay, error messages is down below, and in this case, it's select from accounts where username equals whatever and password equals whatever. So this looks like a single stage where you're not going to have 2 queries running back to back. It's just going to be a single query, and then we should be able to just try that original one we had. Oh, there it is. so nice of Mozilla to remember that. Oh, 0 records found. Let's see, let's try this one. And I think maybe there's not a space right there.
Yeah.
Like right after that comment, maybe the problem. It's kind of interesting.
There's a trim on that string or something.
So it doesn't actually, the history doesn't remember the space. That's kind of a cool observation. I don't know why I think that's cool, but
And there we
I
go.
just think stuff like that's neat. All right, so anyway, there's the dump of the accounts table. And again, this is really trivial because the query that we were targeting happens to be accessing the very table that we wanted to get in the first place. That's just silly luck, but yeah, I guess it happens sometimes. But typically what you'll need to do is you'll need to union with the information schema in order to pull the list of the tables out of the database so that you can kind of look at the names and figure out which one it is you're interested in or whatever. So if you see accounts or users or usernames or whatever, you know, usually the names make sense. I mean, developers have, you know, a logic to the naming convention so that they can pass on their work to the next developer. So it's not usually going to be some random weird name. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, interesting tangent. All right. so Adrian, you want to
Wrap it up?
do some other stuff or?
Actually, I'm done unless you have anything else you want to show.
No, the PHP interpreter shell is kind of my favorite right now. So.
Well, thanks for co-teaching, and
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
hopefully everybody can maybe make it out to our InMath class we'll be doing sometime in February.
Thank you both very much.
But thanks for coming out.
Yeah.